Hi, everyone. My name is Ahmed. I'm a product manager at Firebase Test Lab, and I'm joined with my amazing colleagues here.
Fergus Hurley on the Google Play Developer Console team.
Ali, I'm a product manager on Firebase Crash Reporting.
Michael Bailey, Android engineer at American Express.
And I'm Jordanis from Shazam.
Hi, and we'll be talking to you about the different tools that Google provides you to be able to ensure the quality of your apps during testing and monitoring. Now, we all know that quality is really important for us. We're going to be hearing this plea throughout the conference today. We want you to be able to build the best possible apps, build a great user base, and be able to monetize your apps. And to ensure you build the best possible apps, you need to ensure your quality to be able to make your apps successful. In fact, more than 51% of the one-star reviews that we saw on the reviews on Google Play that we were able to classify are related to quality issues. They are bugs and crashes. Data is clearly showing us that we need to make sure that these quality issues are resolved. And in this talk, we'll be talking to you about the different tools that Google offers to be able to manage your quality throughout the life cycle of your application development. Starting with Firebase Test Lab, which allows you to manage the quality of your application during development, to the Prelaunch report, which was announced today. And it's going to allow you to manage the quality of your app during the release process. And then finally, Firebase Crash Reporting, which was also announced today, which is a cross-platform product that allows you to collect your crashes on Android and iOS, prioritize the most important and most impactful crashes, and resolve them really quickly so that they don't affect your users. Now, many of you probably heard about Cloud Test Lab, which was announced last year at Google I/O. We're now proud to say that we're part of the Firebase family. You guys all heard of Firebase today. This is the most amazing Google developers product that was ever released. It's basically all of the amazing Google tools in one convenient location, and Firebase Test Lab is now part of that suite of tools. So Firebase Test Lab is your first stop to manage your quality during the development process. With Firebase Test Lab, we want you to make sure that your app works well on devices that your users have. And that's why the first part to get started is the infrastructure. This is an actual photo from our device lab. This is devices running in our data centers that we're hosting them from different manufacturers, different API levels, different form factors. Our goal is to make it easy for you to access any of these devices at any time, so that you don't worry about building your own infrastructure, or don't worry about just buying more devices. We got that covered for you. You just build your app, and we run it on this amazing infrastructure. And then the second part of Firebase Test Lab is how it easily integrates with your development workflow. All you need to get started is a web browser and your app. And you can upload your app to the browser, start your test, and go from there. We also built an integration with Android Studio, so that you can run your tests during development in Android Studio. And then finally, we built a command line interface that you can use from your continuous integration environment. If you use Jenkins, you can see the instructions on our developers' documentation. And then also our amazing community built for us instructions on how to use it using Circle CI and TeamCity. So all of these docs are available, and we're adding more and more. And then we all acknowledge that many of us developers think that writing test code is something we don't want to invest in from the very beginning. And this is why we built this amazing robo crawler. This crawler launches your app and clicks on buttons and navigates through it as if a normal user would do. It builds an activity map that visualizes all the paths in your app that lead to a crash. Now look at this. The robo is actually able to navigate through the iOS 16 app that you guys have. It's logging in using Google right now, and it's bypassing a login screen, login using Google. And then it was actually able to find a crash near the end. And it gives you the full path leading to the crash so that you can resolve all of these issues. Now, no matter how smart this robo is, it probably won't be able to guess your custom login credentials. So that's why we're building the espresso test recorder in Android Studio, so that all you need to do to write your first test using espresso is launch the app on your phone. Use it as if you use it on a regular basis. We capture all the interactions that you do, and we build a fully reusable espresso test script for you. This is the fastest way to get started with covering the most important scenarios you need to worry about in your application, the most impactful user journey, cover them with test cases. And then every new change that you add to your code, make sure that these scenarios don't break. These are the most important scenarios in your app. You shouldn't break them by any change. And then finally, Firebase Test Lab provides you with a full report that contains logs, screenshots, stack traces, and a video that allow you to fix any issues in your app and resolve them and go back to a green state, basically. So we mentioned that Firebase Test Lab is basically Cloud Test Lab, which was announced last year at I/O, but it's basically now it's part of the Firebase family. And we're proud to say that we worked really closely with our partners, with our developers, and they helped us shape the product. We ran over 1 million tests on our devices infrastructure, and we believe we can add much more than that. Here's Foursquare. They are telling us how it was easy for them to integrate Firebase Test Lab into their workflow. They didn't need to build their own device infrastructure. They just used Firebase Test Lab. Also, our friends from KKBox, they were able to, just with the robo, just by crawling their application, they were able to resolve issues on launch on their devices that they would have never captured it otherwise, and it would have affected their users. And now I want to introduce Michael Bailey from American Express. Michael and I did a talk previously at DroidCon SF 2 months ago, and I'm really proud to be doing my second talk in a row with him. Michael is a very, very respectful and highly influential in the Android community, so I'm going to leave it up to him. Yeah. Oh.
Thanks, Ahmed. So we have an American Express Android app. We wanted it to be high quality. When tools like Espresso came out, we started writing UI tests to verify that the app did what we wanted it to do. To make sure that those tests were always passing, we set up a physical device farm. It started on my desk with a bunch of devices connected to a Mac Mini so that we can run Jenkins and we can run all of our tests for every branch and every pull request. We ran all the tests to make sure we didn't introduce any defects. Well, that was fine when we had a small number of tests and we didn't have that big of an Android team. But Espresso made it easy to write tests. So we wrote more of them because they helped us increase our quality. But then we needed more devices. And we had problems hooking so many devices to a Mac Mini, so we had to buy more Mac Minis for more Jenkins slaves. So this grew and grew and grew. And we got more engineers, which means more pull requests, which means more tests to run on our infrastructure. A constant refrain at our daily stand-ups was, I can't merge my change because the builds aren't passing, because this device is giving me problems. Can you go unplug it and replug it and with USB to get the test to run? So it was becoming a maintenance burden for us, and it was just a daily refrain and a daily pain in our process to run these tests and make sure that they were always passing. So it was taking a lot of engineer time. It was taking a lot of hardware to run all these tests. Well, last year at Google I/O, I heard about what was called Cloud Test Lab, now Firebase Test Lab for Android, about how I could run my tests on devices provided by Google. So I contacted them. I asked them for early access. Last July, Ahmed and team came to our office. They got us set up with Cloud Test Lab. And then by August, we had decommed our own physical device farm, and we were running all our tests on Firebase Test Lab. This, no more did we have our daily stand-ups, the complaints about running all of your tests and then getting to that last one and it just fails and you have to start the job all over again. We were able to add more engineers and add more tests without having to worry about how are we going to get more devices. Is this just going to slow down our whole process? So by switching to this, we got more productivity. We were able to get early access to this tool, and we have a lot less maintenance. We can actually focus ourselves on writing the tests and with making a high-quality app that our card members expect. So now I'm going to turn it over to Fergus from the Play team.
Thanks, Michael. I'm very excited to be here today to announce the pre-launch report as part of the Play Developer Console. So as Ahmed talked about, when you're in the development lifecycle of building your app, you should be testing it using Firebase Test Lab for Android. using Android Studio integrations, Jenkins plugins, and the command line. But then when you're just about to release your app to the 1.2 billion monthly active Play users, you want that one last sanity check. Did I fix all those issues? Is my app ready to be shown to that many users? How does my app look across all these devices? And that's where the pre-launch report comes in and shines. So before I go into what is actually included in the pre-launch report, hands up if you have an app on Play today. All right, awesome. Keep your hand up if you tested that latest version that you pushed to all your users on more than 10 devices. All right, I'm impressed. Keep your hand up if you were able to get those results within an hour. OK, well, very impressive guy over here. And I'm going to show you how you can all keep your hand up when you ask that question in the future as a result of the pre-launch report. So the pre-launch report is powered by Firebase Test Lab. And it includes 3 parts today: crashes, screenshots, and security. In the crashes section, we show you the results of the robo that Amma described interacting with your app for about 5 minutes across 10+ physical Android devices. And we show you if there was a crash, we show you the stack trace, the logcat, the device spec, and a video of the robot interacting with the application. And so this really helps you be able to get to the problem that the app has and be able to solve that crash. As you can see with this app developer, their first version they uploaded as part of the pre-launch report had a lot of issues. Then as they kept releasing new versions, they fixed the issue. And then they, with their final version they've just pushed to the alpha and beta channel, they've identified 2 new crashes. And they can be able to solve those. So we know that no developer in this room would ever have a crash happen in their app. So we've decided to launch the screenshot section, which helps you with the usability issues with your app. And this is really powerful when you have green results as part of your pre-launch report. So as part of this, you can see what your app looks like across the different Android devices, different Android versions, different screen resolutions, screen sizes, and even languages. So you can see what your app looks like in right to left language Arabic, in the emerging markets, Hindi, or in languages that have long strings. So for example, here you see that in German, there's an issue with the layout of the text. And this really helps your design team be able to catch those issues before it's pushed to all your users. Great. The last part of the report that I'm going to tell you about today is the security section. This is where we put Google's security team to work for you. This is where we have the known vulnerabilities that we detect in your application identified, and we give you the information to be able to help you solve that issue before you release it to all the users on Play. So how do you get access to this pre-launch report? You just go to the Google Play Developer Console, click on the Pre-Launch Report tab, which replaces the Cloud Test Lab tab that used to be part of the Play Developer Console, and you will then have it, when you click on that tab and opt in, that the next APK you upload to the alpha and beta channel will have this report generated within 1 hour. We've already found that 60% of the top 1,000 apps on Google Play already use the alpha and beta channel. And if you didn't have a reason to use it before, now you do. So we really encourage you to do that. Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Ali to talk about Firebase crash reporting.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We have also launched Firebase Crash Reporting today, and we're super excited about it. So thanks so much for being here. Along with Test Lab and the pre-launch report, we really think that crash reporting completes our vision for app quality. While Test Lab focuses on the development stage, and while the pre-launch report focuses on the release stage, crash reporting focuses on production. It focuses on that stage where you have actual users coming into your app, interacting with your app. And the objective here is to give them the best possible user experience. And this is not exactly the easiest thing, right? When you think about the mobile ecosystem we live in, there's many variables at play. We have multiple operating systems. We have many different OS levels, API levels, different device manufacturers, different device models. The list of variables just goes on and on. And the combination of all these things can be just too much to handle within testing alone. but you need to have something in production, because losing users that happen to be on a device that wasn't tested or happen to go through a user path that wasn't accounted for is just not acceptable. Every single user is as important as every other user. And that's exactly why we introduced Firebase Crash Reporting. So what is it exactly? Crash Reporting is an SDK that supports both iOS and Android. You get it packaged into your app, you push it to production, and it detects information about the errors that your users see. It aggregates this data, and using the Firebase console, you get to see details about it so that you can be on your way to fixing these issues faster than ever. Setting up is really easy. If you're on Android, you grab the Cradle plugin. If you're on iOS, install the pod, add one line of code to initialize Firebase, and off you go. You have errors running. And when you actually push to production, and you start seeing errors coming in, when they first come in, they start looking something like this, right? They're all over the place. Some errors come from some devices, but not the others. Some errors come from specific user paths that weren't accounted for. And the first thing we do with this data is we cluster it. So it looks something like this. We group these errors by having them in buckets of similar stack traces. And what that does for you is a couple of things. First of all, it allows you to get a sense of how many unique issues you have in your app. And the other thing is that you get a sense of prioritization. You understand for each cluster of errors, is it a fatal error or a non-fatal error? You get a user count, and you get a number of occurrences, so you understand the severity of that issue. Our friends in Skyscanner have been using this for a little while, and using clustering, they were able to identify a couple of out-of-memory issues, and they cut down their crashes by 30%. So think about this when you work on your own app, the amount of gain that you can have with such a simple action. OK, so now you've identified through clustering what you need to work on. The best part now is actually fixing the issue, right? So this is where the Firebase console comes in. We give you a lot of data, a lot of information, basically everything that you need to identify the root cause of the issue and get it done in no time. The first thing you see is a top-level breakdown of metrics. So we'll tell you obvious things like the exception name in Android or the crashing signal in iOS, but we also tell you things like a breakdown of the app version so that you can understand if your latest app version in production is doing better or worse than the previous ones. We'll also give you a breakdown of the operating systems or operating system levels, a breakdown of the devices, and so on. And the idea here is that you're quickly able to attribute the errors to some factors and eliminate other factors. The next thing we give you is the stack trace, which is probably the most important thing. We support symbolication on iOS and deobfuscation on Android, which means that you get to see everything down to the line number. We even highlight that frame in the stack trace that belongs in your app so that you can jump in the problem right away and not waste any time. Additionally, you get comprehensive device diagnostics. And this is important for a couple of things, but let me first tell you what you get. Some of the things that we give you are the amount of RAM and disk space that are available on your device. You get things like, was the device in landscape or portrait? You get the timestamp of the actual error, API levels, basically everything you can think of that is set on a device. And you get to actually go through instances and see what the device of that user was like at the moment the error took place. And this is pretty important, not just because you get to fix the issue faster, but you also get to save time on customer support because you don't have to go do that back and forth with your users so that you understand what the device was like at the time of the error. Everything I've talked about so far is about creating a snapshot, an accurate snapshot of the issue. But what happens when you have multiple ways that can lead you to the same point in the code, which happens often? For that, we have an API that allows you to log custom events. We, out of the box, log some events for you, such as when the crash actually takes place. But then you get to interlace your own custom events with it so that you can get to read your errors kind of like a story. So I called my backend API, I got some data back, and I populated my UI model, and then boom, a crash happens. So reproducing that crash becomes that much easier. Over the last couple of months, we've had the great pleasure of working with our friends in Shazam. They've been kind enough to test our product and give us great feedback and make it much better. And today, I'm really, really happy to have my friend Jordanis from Shazam, who leads Android development, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it. So, Jordanis.
Thank you. Top points for pronouncing my name correctly, so that's good. I've seen a lot of excited people about Firebase today. For Shazam, that excitement started a couple of months ago when we were first contacted by the Firebase team. At Shazam, we deeply care about how users perceive the quality of the app, and we know that it's hugely correlated to the stability of the app. So because installation was so easy, we decided, and some of the features that Ali just described were so compelling, we decided to integrate with crash reporting first. After a couple of months of having it out in production, it turns out to be a quite valuable addition to our current toolchain, and that's for those three reasons. Shazam gets a very large number of users per day, and even if just a tiny percentage of those users experiences a crash, it adds up. So the number of crashes are actually quite a lot. In our previous system, couldn't handle all of that traffic. So we knew we're not getting the whole picture. We know that's not going to be an issue with Google, with Firebase, because it's powered by Google's massively scalable infrastructure. And we know we always have a very accurate view of how many crashes we get. Ali just described the level of details you get with Firebase crash reporting, and I'll give an example of how that helped us. Currently, we are also getting the number of users and the distribution of users where a crash occurs, which we didn't have before. A couple of releases ago, we saw two new issues that were appearing with the same kind of frequency, but with very different distributions of users. So the first one was very spread out, very high distribution. So we knew that wasn't going to be a device-specific bug, and it was going to be quite occasional. The other one, on the other hand, was very specific, very limited number of users. So when we went to the Firebase console, we saw exactly the manufacturers, the models that were affected, and the OS versions, and that's how we managed to fix the issues. And the breadth of Firebase, I said we integrated with crash reporting. We also used analytics. We know it's all going to be part of the same unified SDK and console. So very recently, we also started using dynamic links, which, as you may have seen, helps you maintain the context of a user through the installation of your app. It's been amazing to be an early user of crash reporting, and we're looking forward to do more and more integrations. Ali, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Pao. I want to touch on a point that Jordanis just mentioned at the end. One of the main principles that guide us as we think about app quality is that it's not just about metrics that you show in a dashboard. It's what you do with this data. And it's about putting your users first by having timely action and winning them. We think that Firebase can be a key ingredient to that. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have an e-commerce app and you're about to push this new feature that you think is going to have a great effect on your conversion rates, okay? And you want to keep an eye on quality, of course. So you jump into the Firebase console, and the first thing you do is go to Analytics. In Analytics, you build an audience of users that see errors. You get to do this because we have this integration out of the box. So every time crash reporting actually catches an error, that user gets added to an audience. And we'll see how important this is in a bit. The second thing you do is you go to remote config, which allows you to control things remotely. And you wire that to your feature so you can use it as an on-off switch. So you get to pull the plug on it anytime you want to without actually having to push an update. OK, so you do these two things. You push your new version out with the feature. And then you take a look at the crash reporting console. And all of a sudden, there's a spike in errors. Obviously, that's not a good thing. So you drill a bit more into it. You take a look at the stack trace. And you quickly realize this has something to do with the feature that you just pushed. You jump back into remote config. You turn the feature off. And then going to Firebase notifications, you can actually send a push notification to an audience in Analytics. Well, you just created an audience of people that see errors. So now you can automatically send them a push notification, tell them, sorry, that you're working on this, and maybe send them a discount to re-engage them back into the app. So within minutes, you get to do things that would otherwise take you days of coding. And that's not even counting the time that it would have taken your users to pick up an update. So it's really powerful stuff. And of course, at the end, when you fix the issue, you go back to test lab, you build a test case for it, and you make sure that any possible regression that might happen in the future never actually makes it to your users. This is what's so cool about Firebase. It is 14 powerful features that you get access to using one SDK in one console, and you mix and match whatever features you need. They are cross-platform. The vast majority of features we have today are already supporting iOS and Android, and it's only going to get better as we cross-integrate them more and more. So we hope that this gives you a different perspective on app quality and get you to think about it throughout the stages of your app. When you develop, use Test Lab to make sure that you catch all the bugs that you can catch in development. When you're about to release, keep your eye on the alpha and beta channels and make sure that your release is looking good. And then in production, use crash reporting to catch everything out there. We really think that using this combination will go a long way and will get you those 5-star reviews. We hope you're excited. We already have an amazing community of app developers that you can see on this slide, and we would love nothing more than for you guys to join us. Some last notes here. We have a booth set up right outside of this room where the test lab team actually set up a rack with actual devices in it. It's really cool. You really need to check this out. So drop us a visit over there. We're going to be around as well for Q&A for about an hour or so. We'd love to talk to you. And finally, all the products we talked about today are live today. So go to the consoles, start hacking away, enjoy it, and please keep thinking about app quality. It really matters. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you in a bit.
So we'll do Q&A. There's mics here if you want to ask questions right now, actually. Yeah. Yeah, first question.
Hi. How does the automated espresso testing work with asynchronous code? Specifically something that's in event bus or something like RxJava that's not using async tasks or something that has the idling resources?
Yeah, so this is definitely a great question. So this is one of the scenarios that we're still considering to support. Like one thing we're considering to do is add delays for that. We know this isn't the optimal way, but the idea here is like we generate at least a boilerplate of a fully functional espresso code for you, and then you can either add the idling resource part of it or use it as is. So that's basically the idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. The questions just come to the mic if you want to ask a question. Yeah, next question.
So with Firebase Test Lab, maybe the gentleman at American Espresso, is the idea that you use it as part of your continuous integration process, or is it more just when you're ready to release, you're going to go and send a build up there? Like, is there a quick enough performance to be able to go run this and then be able to have your check-in stage based on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think, both are valid use cases, I think. If you have changes on a branch and you want to make sure that all your tests are passing before that branch gets merged, then a CI is a great place to do that. Of course, you want to make sure you do the regression before you launch, and then also you get the additional protection of the play launch report. So,
right, but per check-in?
We run every branch before it gets merged. So whatever the latest check-in when the CI picks it up, if you do a couple check-ins in a row, it may miss one, but it's always the latest check-in on every pull request.
Cool, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, so you said it was one single SDK. Have you made any thoughts on how to avoid making one massive monolithic SDK over like smaller bite-sized pieces, like compared to Google Play services? I'm sure people are worried about that issue.
The question is about the Firebase SDK, right?
Yeah, like, are you going to provide like a...
How big is the Firebase SDK?
Right, so the documentations are actually live, and you do get to sort of cut the SDK into pieces depending on what you want. So in the case of iOS, for example, you can include individual pods, but we have some configuration pods that grab a bunch of products for you as a base package. So there's a flexibility there.
Perfect, and a lot of amazing announcements. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I was wondering how this new mechanism is different from the old crash reporting mechanism where the user gets to select send details, screenshots of the report, and are the end users aware of this change, and Do they have control
Yes.
over it?
Yeah, so on the Google Play developer console, you see crashes that are reported by users for the platform. So these are crashes and ANRs, like fatal exceptions. Whereas the SDK is where you can throw your own custom exceptions as well. So the SDK will catch all the exceptions that you throw, and then if you link your account with Play, you can have the ANRs from Google Play show up in the Firebase crash reporting as well. So we recommend people to use Firebase crash reporting as the crash reporting tool moving forward to be able to improve your iOS and Android applications.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I have two questions actually. The first one, there's a lot of Firebase branding. Can we use it without Firebase as a backend?
So can you use Firebase crash reporting without use Firebase backend? Yes.
Correct. Yes?
Definitely.
Okay, perfect.
You can pick and choose which pieces of the offering you want to use. So no matter what backend you use, you can use Firebase crash reporting.
Cool. And
So
the second question is, can we use Firebase test reporting also as a feedback tool so clients can enter feedback, not just errors?
What sort of feedback?
Let's say somebody, it's not necessarily a crash or an issue, but it's something that's behaving erratically. Are they able to somehow manually bring up an interface that can say, hey, by the way, why does this keep happening?
That's not something that's supported today, but definitely a great feature request and something that could be linked into throwing your own custom exception.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Hello. I just want to know about custom exceptions. Can I put some custom fields like user ID or something and filter by that?
I'm not so sure I got the question. Can you say that again?
Can you put custom identifiers with your crash? So can you send user IDs yourself?
We don't have this at the moment. It's one of our top requests, so we're definitely going to be working on it. The problem with this feature is that it has some implications on privacy, of course. So we want to make sure that we do it the right way, in a way that protects end user privacy. But we're aware of this request, and we're working on it as a priority.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Our app uses the camera, and it's always been hard to test multiple devices with racks like the lab offers when we have like this proprietary technology that has to take frames and understand what they're filming. Do you have any suggestions how we can test something like that?
Sure. So one way to test scenarios like these is to mock the input to the camera and then do the processing. So that's kind of if you do the instrumentation testing, that's one way to do it. And then the thing is, like, you can still use the cameras. These are actual phones, so you can still access the devices. The fact is, we tape the back of the camera because we don't want like any privacy concerns from people looking at other people's apps at the same time. Yeah. So that's what we do. But you can still get like a set of frames that you can do any processing for. Yeah. So you can like do the actual capturing of the screen and then mock the expected response and do the processing afterwards.
And that is one of the big advantages of using the physical devices that TestLab has to offer versus using virtual devices.
That sounds like a good idea, thanks. But if I want to test the output of the camera itself, so there's no possibility today on the lab, right?
Yeah, but the idea is like the camera itself is it's depending on the manufacturer. Like you should expect, you should expect a video at the end, and your app will perform as well as it will be able to process that video, right? So you can still make sure that the camera launches, it fires up, it records something, and then separate the video processing from that. Basically, like in testing in general, you try to break down every part. Like you don't want to put as much dependencies. So many dependencies in your testing, you want to break it down as much as possible, and that's one way to do it, is basically break them down. That's like recording versus processing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I had two questions for the gentleman from Amex. How big was your test suite? How long does it take for you to run it during a PR verify process?
So it's grown over time. We're well over 1,000 tests now. Instrumentation tests, and we break them up and we shard them, meaning we don't run them in one continuous single invocation. We run them in multiple invocations to CTL. So it will depend on exactly how you run them, like if you divide them up and how you do that. It'll depend also on the queuing time on CTL. But I would say that if you have...
In a typical PR verify process, how long does it take?
We could see 20 to 30 minutes, which usually we also do code review, so the code review usually takes longer than that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of factors.
And did you think about any cross-platform solutions? Are you using this for cross-platform for both iOS and Android, or are you just using it for Android?
Just for Android.
Okay. So this is a question for the rest of the panel. Do we have successful examples of folks who've done it for cross-platform, basically, for both iOS as well as Android?
So yeah, definitely Firebase is a cross-platform product. It works across Android and iOS. But for now, Firebase Test Lab for Android is still Android only, and we're still evaluating the iOS support.
So when you said Firebase was cross-platform, it was everything else.
Yeah, exactly, except for Test Lab. Yep.
And do you have plans for doing that cross-platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it took us like some significant effort to be able to bring this infrastructure up and running. So we're still evaluating the iOS offerings, so just stay tuned for updates. But yeah, nothing to announce for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, we use Appium to drive tests. Is that supported in Test Lab? And if not, what is supported?
Yeah, Appium is not supported on Test Lab. So right now we support the Android instrumentation testing frameworks, Espresso, UI Automator 2.0, and Robotium. And right now with the Espresso test recorder, yeah, go ahead and give it a try and start hacking with Espresso.
OK, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, I have a question about the pre-release testing. Our app has a login screen when you can't get past it without logging in, and our issue that we've had with testing currently on the console is we just get a login screen, it presses around a little bit, and then that finishes the testing. Is there any plans to give like simple login information?
Yeah, so one of the GIFs that Ahmed demonstrated was handling a login screen for Google Plus or Google, any Google account really. And so that's already supported today if you use a Google login flow in your application. And we are working on other login flows, but today the real value is if you don't have a login or you have a Google login with your application.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I have a question about scalability for test labs, specifically 2 dimensions. So our app is quite popular in Kenya, and we've seen some pretty unique devices and OS versions on it. And so if that device is not in test labs, how would we request that? And 2, since the announcement today, I assume a lot of developers are going to be trying it out. And so how do you foresee scaling it to Google Scale as all these developers want to run their tests across all of the devices in your test lab?
That's a great question. I think what Test Lab is trying to help you with is these exact 2 points that you mentioned. It's something like we're taking care of the infrastructure so that you don't have to, and we're taking care of getting all the devices that you need so that you don't have to. And it's growing with Google Scale, so we're building our infrastructure right now with Google Scale. You should expect to get started and run it right now. And in terms of devices diversity, this is our top priority, where we just adding more devices now. So just keep looking. Hopefully the devices that are popular in Kenya will be available soon, and then you'll get more and more value over time.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I have a question directed to one of the person, Michael, who works at Amex. So how do you guys test a feature called remote check deposit? Like anything that is remote check deposit, anything that is related to the camera, taking a picture.
Yeah, we haven't done any camera testing. So the app that we use on Cloud Test Lab has no camera features in it. So we haven't done any camera testing.
It isn't supported using Espresso, right? Because a third party?
You mean you can't deposit a check in the test?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned, so one way to do it is break it down into 2 parts. So you want to make sure that the camera fires, that's one test you need to account for. And then the other part is you need to make sure that when it gets an image, it's able to process it, right? So yeah, this is kind of the recommended approach to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How do we get those screenshots in the developer console? Are those going to be kind of automatic, or do we need to put in some test code that tells you where to take the screenshots?
Yeah, so today, the way it works is you just upload your APK to the Play Developer Console, and the robo that Amma described will interact with the app for about 5 minutes, and there will be screenshots taken about every second that the robot is interacting. We're adjusting it to be able to make sure we capture the biggest diff in screen differences so it's most valuable to you, and investigating other ways we can be able to enhance that with showing you the state the app is in. But yeah, you should be able to get it today, and you shouldn't have to do any work really. You just need to upload your APK, and the report is generated for free. So yeah, I encourage you to start using it and send us feedback. Thanks.
One thing to add to what Fergus mentioned as well is if you're using it to run your instrumentation tests, if you're using Espresso, then we have a library that's available in our documentation that you can use. And as you mentioned, like you have to take screenshots at the locations you want using that library.
So how does Firebase Analytics compare to Google Analytics?
I think that's something that there's another session on the analytics side of things, and maybe that would be the right forum for that question. Okay. Unfortunately, we're
the session actually was at 3 p.m., but I can connect you with a PM for
yeah.
Hi. So I work for a client that's very concerned about confidentiality. So when you do capture the screenshots and the crash reporting, do you store that? Like, do you guys store that, or?
So there's no screenshots captured in crash reporting, right? So it never touches your end user.
Okay.
The screenshots are in the pre-release report and test lab.
Okay.
And these are usually dummy accounts.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I know Test Lab is a developer-oriented platform. What is the role of a QA or a tester in all this environment?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things you see is that the QA teams spend a lot of time actually setting up the devices and like configuring the cables, which is an inefficient use of their time in a lot of ways. Whereas now they can be able to go and run all the tests and be able to work on the automation of the tests and be able to go through the results and be able to actually then generate the reports and the bugs of what issues are happening. So it's more about sort of enhancing the QA team's ability to be able to make the rest of the team aware of the issues that are being uncovered. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amma, do you want to add to that?
Sure. So yeah, for the QA team question, so yeah, basically as Fergus mentioned, like the QA team can build your own infrastructure, and then another use case that is great here for the QA team as well is previously from our research, what we noticed is that people will have a device closet, and before releasing a new version of the app, you just grab a phone from the closet, run a certain scenario, put it back, and grab another phone. So right now with the Espresso test recorder, this is exactly what we want to make it easier for you. You just record all your script once and then run it in the cloud. So you ensure that your app performs on all of these devices with just one trial of your app.
Yeah, thank you.
2 questions. First, what is the average crash rate of the most popular application? Second, quality is more than crash and features and performance such as FPS and something like that. Do you have any plan to test this and improve the performance?
Yeah, performance testing is definitely something where we've heard so many like ideas and feedback about from developers. So it's something we will probably start thinking about. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
The first question is, what is the average?
So in terms of the previous question about the confidentiality of app developers, that is something that we definitely respect. So we wouldn't be able to tell you which apps are the crashiest ones, unfortunately. Sorry about that.
Will you publish a standard or something for a bad crash rate or good crash rate?
Yeah, definitely something that we could investigate is being able to show you how you compare with your peers in a way where it is anonymized for the rest of the group. Thanks for that feedback. I think we have time for one last question. So maybe the person behind you can just...
So do you have a way to test the look and feel of the application rather than like the functionality?
Yeah, so as part of the pre-launch report, we show you the screenshots. And today, you actually can look through the screenshots and be able to identify the issues yourself. But definitely, things that we are investigating is accessibility and other identification of the issues that are appearing on those screens. Yeah.
Okay, and then so the app has to be hosted in Firebase for it to be like tested, or it can be separate?
Not necessarily. Any Android app can work. Yeah.
Got it.
You can choose to just use one Firebase offering.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're out of time now, but thanks everyone for joining and encourage you to use App Quality tools.